you were also talking in your book about symbolism and framing. How do you come to that realization, or even within your business or as you're working with clients? What symbols do you use? How do you frame things to inspire people to get to that aha moment?
So symbolism, I definitely took from, all of my experience in the military. And I thought about how I viewed the symbols associated with people who I had respect for, and things like valor and activities that drive people literally to put their lives on the line in ways. And they don't end up doing it for the medal, but the way that the world sees it and sees the activity that they did and the stories that were told around what earned them that medal ultimately inform how they react in those situations. So they're not doing it necessarily for that medal. They're doing it for the people that are left and right, but they're informed mentally about how to do the right thing based off of how the symbol has been, presented to somebody else who kind of, replicated that activity or did it ahead of them. So symbolism, and I think about things like the Purple Heart that stick out, that's tied all the way back to, to George Washington and the Revolutionary War. It's got his face on it still today. And you think about Purple Heart recipients and you're like, wow, those people have bled for this country, and people have continued to willingly do that. I think those things are just really powerful. The framing fronts. So I wrote my master's thesis on framing and political discourse. Right. I joined the military before September 11th. September 11th happened, and then I ended up on this kind of round trip tour. But Iraq was kind of my war. I went 6 times. I was there for every phase of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and when I wrote my thesis, I did it on how our political leaders framed the justification for the war, because my job was literally to hunt for weapons of mass destruction. And the perspective was that weapons of mass destruction were the justification for the invasion of Iraq, because it really wasn't tied to 9/11 and terrorists. So I listened and read everything that was said by the top 4, the president, the vice president, the secretary of defense, and the secretary of state in the lead up to the war. And I found that almost everything that they said was true. They were factual statements. And what would happen is they would go on, they would make speeches, they would make factual statements. And then you'd get the pundits and the media and people, they were taking the next logical step with what they heard from those people. So it went from Saddam's a bad guy, Saddam kicked out inspectors, Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, all factual statements, to the immediate response from the media was Saddam's a bad guy who has weapons of mass destruction, and there's an imminent threat. So they didn't have to say anything that wasn't true. They didn't have to make that logical step. All they had to do was kind of set it up for the people who were going to be amplifying that voice to take the next logical